Russo'sBrand.com, where the pros are the pros.
Well, conflicting reports on Britt Baker's status with AEW. So the first report came from Bodyslam.net that Britt Baker wants out of AEW and that it was down to a combination of things, burning bridges with people backstage, the atmosphere in the company changing around her, and the fact she's essentially achieved all there is to achieve in AEW, and that she's under contract until 2026, although AEW can add time due to her injury, but AEW does not want to release her. And then she added fuel to this by posting a picture on Instagram of a water bottle with the caption, "A bottle of water can be $1 at a supermarket, $3 at the gym, $5 at the movies, $6 on a plane. Same water. The only thing that changed its value was the place. So next time you feel your worth is nothing, maybe you're at the wrong place." Well, then Fightful came in, and they're claiming none of this is true. Britt's not going anywhere. That they talked to people in AEW and that the report was news to them. They hadn't heard anything about her wanting to leave the company. And that the Instagram story was simply another inspirational quote that she regularly posts on her social feeds. People in AEW that Fightful reached out to haven't been told about Baker leaving the company. And those that cross paths with her on the convention circuit haven't heard anything either. So she's not booked in for AEW All In Texas or their convention or the StarCast convention the same weekend. She's not injured anymore. She's not on TV. Fightful's reporting that AEW could add time that would keep her there for 2 more years and that they were going to bring her back in May, but then creative plans stalled.
Those things happen. I mean, you can have a person that's the right piece of the puzzle, but it's the right time. It's not the right time. The timing is wrong, and you can't utilize them to their fullest effect because a lot of times you don't have the other side of the coin. You don't have somebody for them to dance with. And no matter how popular a babyface is or how much heat a heel has, no one in this business has ever nor will ever draw money on their own. Just that simple. And, it sounds like it really these days fascinates me to hear someone used to, the frustration came in just making money. If you didn't get booked, you didn't get paid. If you didn't get booked and you didn't get paid, you didn't make money. And you were frustrated because you weren't getting booked for one reason, because you weren't getting paid. That was it. Now, people are getting paid whether they work or not, but are getting frustrated because they're not getting booked. And it's like, and if you talk to any old time wrestler, they're all going to tell you, hey, kid, just take the check. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's going to be plenty of time for you to be able to wrestle. On that side of things, I can understand. On the other side, I can also understand if you're not relevant, if you're not present, if you're not out there selling your product, well, then your product sits on the shelf, and eventually at some point that shelf time goes away. So your value then starts to decrease. It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Interesting situation, though.
Not only that, first of all, Al, I just want to say this before I make my point. I don't appreciate you coming on the show half naked. You can come on a little bit more well dressed on the show,
brother.
Okay, you're half naked.
I'm all about summer.
Yeah. Okay. Listen to me.
And you being branded by the cult. Sometimes you come out here with your tank tops on, your arms swinging in the wind.
Yeah. Listen. Now, I got a couple of things I want to say about this.
Look like loose strings off your shirt.
First of all, we have to talk about the absolute ridiculousness of Sean Sap and Fightful chasing this story, because the reality of the situation is they may be doing an angle and Britt Baker may be working that she's unhappy and leaving. So these guys are chasing their own tail, and they may be working an angle, so they're going to be made to look like absolute imbeciles.
Well, but that is an indication of how literally the newsletter or wrestling journalist has become a beast unto itself and needs to be fed. And so that any possibility of an angle for a story they're going to chase down, hoping that they're the ones that got the jump on it before anybody else, so they can claim laurels.
And the other part of this, Al, is this is what we talk about a lot. And man, I go all the way back to 2002 when I got a list of what Jerry Jarrett was paying the wrestlers at TNA. And I said to Jerry, Jerry, you can't pay them that little. And Jerry Jarrett laughed at me and said, Vince, are you kidding me? They would pay us to be on our TV. With that being said, Al, what we talk about all the time is a lot of these wrestlers today, they're not looking at it as business. It's almost like we could care how much we're sitting home and getting paid. We want to wrestle. Like that's how the majority of them look at it, which I say was crazy. I remember when WCW as a writer was sitting me home and paying me. The last thing I wanted to do was go back to work. But that's how it was. You know, it was a business, and man, as long as I'm getting paid, you could do whatever you want with me, but it's just not that way today.
I've heard a lot of wrestlers that are very, upset. I mean, really openly upset that they're getting paid a lot more money than what they'd ever be. I mean, let's face it. They're being paid more than their actual value. They really are, based on an audience and what they're drawing. They are. And they're very frustrated because now they're not getting to perform. Back in the day, it was, if I can get paid, great. Again, it's a double-edged sword. On one hand, you're getting paid and you're sitting at home and, hey, that's great. Thumbs up. I'm not investing anything as far as my time and my effort into getting a return. So I'm winning. The downside is, you're right, but you're also not in the public eye anymore, and you're no longer relevant. You're no longer present, and now your value is going to start to decrease on the market.
We see this a lot with AEW, though. I know this is frustrating to the fans. People just disappear for months and months and months at a time when they're healthy.
Because you're going to have that. You have such a huge roster. You can't sell everyone. You can't give everyone, because you've only got so much television real estate, so much time each week, so many segments.
Al, I got to interrupt you. Let me tell you what's going on, because it's the same thing at the WWE. Al, here's what's going on. Okay. Yeah. Let's say AEW and WWE. Here's what's going on, Al. Unlike you and OVW and what you do and what you've been doing for decades, there is a lack of creativity. So here's what they're doing. Hunter's doing the same thing. Al, just like in the ring, they're playing for the pops. It's all to get the pop. And don't tell me what a pop is. I know the pop to Jerry and his. We don't got to go through that.
I wasn't going to.
They're all playing for the pop. Al, they're doing that writing TV. They're doing the same thing. They bring in all these people, whether it's a new NXT person, whether it's re-sign Rusev, whether it's re-sign Aleister Black, and they just bring them in for the pop. They get the pop when they're introduced, and then they're another name of the roster. This is the card. This is like how they write television. There's no creative. It's the pop, 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 pop. That's why so many people are going in, and then you don't see them anymore.
True. I agree with you. I mean, that was a business model that Eric Bischoff kind of started with the NWO, and it worked at the time because it worked at the time because you were bringing in huge names. Well, it drew eyes because it was like, okay, who's showing up this week? Right. But that's you're right. It's no creativity because there's no substance to it. There's no legs to it. And that you can't maintain it and you can't keep it. But even with that, when you already have a substantial roster, a lot of people, you don't have enough time. And, used to, you would bring a guy in, you would make them, because you need a healthy, it's really a tough spot. And I don't know quite how to explain it. like as a booker or writer, whatever you want to call them. I don't know what new names you guys come up with them for it, but as a person who's putting the show together, okay, you want a healthy mid card and a certain amount of depth to it because you need it. Yeah, you've got to have enough to where you can't feature them all the time, but you've got to have them to where when they come out and you're trying to, let's say, elevate somebody or build someone up, then you have that mid card that means something when the guy or the girl you want is trying to be built, that when they beat that person, it means something. It elevates them. It's not just, oh, you just beat another person on the card. But on the downside of that is you now have so many talent that you can't feature all of them every single week. And you're going to have to then put on a rotation of factoring in, well, we haven't had so-and-so for the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Let's get them in there and give them a couple of wins, maintain them so that when we need them, they can help us build somebody to the main event.
Well, Al, here's another.
At some point, if they catch fire, build them to the main event.
Here's another reason why it's backfiring, because Al, what's happening is they're using this as a tool to get the pop, and every other week, sometimes every week, it's somebody new, so they're not getting anybody over because you know, Al, how simple is this? Do we really need to tell them? You bring in a new character. You concentrate on that character. You get that character over. Once that character is over, you bring in the next one. Bro, every 2 weeks, there is a new face on WWE TV. They don't put time into any of them, and no one's getting over.
And that is a symptom of trying to appeal to that niche, knee-jerk reaction audience of the internet wrestling community that they all now sit there and bag on.
So, I mean, now they brought in they re-signed and brought in Rusev and Aleister Black at the same exact time. That would have never been done in the past. So now they brought them in at the same time.
Now you can't spotlight either one.
Right. And now they bring these guys back and they're just two more wrestlers on the card. That's all they are. Yeah. It's
you're
crazy.
Right. You're right. And that's even worse than AEW because he has so many and he hires so many so frequently that you just can't keep up, and you can't keep everyone properly busy enough to where they don't start to resent and then don't start to become neurotic and then don't start to then wish that they could leave and start using social media as a tool to ply that interest to try to leverage it to get to go.
There's very few, in my opinion, in AEW that carry themselves as a star. And I think Britt Baker carries herself as a star. So to me, it's just like a no-brainer. She should be on TV every week. And I think a lot of people see it that way.
Again, who's she going to work with? Yeah, she should be on her TV. You're absolutely right. Who should she work with? Who are you going to have her work with that now that it's going to mean something? Or are you wanting to try to hold her off? Let's say they want to work with Toni Storm. That'd be great. That'd probably be money, right? Well, why aren't we doing that? Well, do we want to build that to one of the bigger pay-per-views and have that build last to the pay-per-view? Well, if we start it now and it's 6 months to the next really big, prominent pay-per-view, we're going to shoot that wad before we get there. So, who in between then do we use? It's possible, but to Vince's point, you got to be creative and you got to at least put her on TV, to your point, utilize her star power and then put her on a different path that's not directly to Toni Storm that in 6 months brings them together. But that takes a lot of creativity and a lot of planning. And when you're skipping between, how many other people they have on the roster trying to satisfy everyone all the time and trying to be popular and trying to be liked.
On top of that, Al, when you talk about planning, the more shows you add, the less time you have to plan. And
True.
that is so evident. They're content creators, man. That's what they are. There are customers out there that will pay them huge money. And what they're doing right now is just fulfilling their contractual obligations. There's no time to plan with all the shows they have out.
I think WWE has kind of shifted that direction as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about. WWE
and AEW are just they're no longer in the truly aren't in the wrestling.
Right, you're right.
They are in the content creation business.
Yep.
And as a result, for them it has changed.
Absolutely.
It's not about drawing a house. It's simply about banging out numbers.
That's it. And shows and content. That's it.